kind of tough to get up after this first presentation we had. I should have brought a bottle to put on stage. I wonder if as many people would have gathered around that one looked amazed by the design and the construction of the Absolut bottle. But anyway, the presentation will be partly movie-based, so you won't have to hear me speak all the time. So we have a short movie in the beginning, and then we have some facts and the journey that we've made for the past 3 or 4 years, and then we end with a short movie as well. So we kick off with a short movie about Absolut.
This is a story of reimagining what's possible. A story of people who believed in creating something better. This is a story of transformation from status quo to extraordinary. This is the story of Absolut. 1988, New York City. It was closing time at the Odeon. The bartender watched as the waitresses danced their way between tables with nothing but smiles on their faces. He wanted to thank them for making the long nights worth every second. Doing what he did best, he'd make them a drink. Transforming a classic, he started with Absolut Citron, a new type of vodka with a fresh lemon essence at its heart. Next, he added dashes of lime juice and orange liqueur. He continued with a splash of cranberry, giving it a blush pink hue. Shaken, strained, and served up with a twist. This is the story of how one of the most famous cocktails in the world was reborn for modern age, the Cosmopolitan. That was just one bar, one city. Around the world, barmen embraced the first premium vodka, inventing thousands of new cocktails around this versatile spirit, something mixologists continue to do today. In fact, this story starts nearly 150 years before this Cosmo was created. 1836, southern Sweden. A boy named Lars Olsson Smith was born into poverty. Dreaming of a life greater than he'd known, Smith was determined to make something of himself. It didn't take long. By the age of 26, Smith distributed 3/4 of all vodka sold in Sweden, but he still dreamt bigger. 1879, Smith transformed his vodka, distilling it hundreds of times until all impurities were removed. The result was a product of unrivaled quality. He named it Absolutely Pure Vodka. His empire growing internationally, he returned to southern Sweden and built a new distillery to meet the growing demand. Over a century later, there it remains, where Swedish vodka craftsmanship has been perfected over generations. It's in this same place that Absolut has transformed its potential yet again through Absolut Elix, a single estate handcrafted vodka. But all Absolut starts in the same way, with farmers like Marcus who ferry their harvest of winter wheat directly to the distillery. The partnerships with local farms are unique to Absolut, transforming how an international vodka is typically made. Every bottle is both from Aarhus and by the people of Aarhus. This is not just vodka. This is a community working the land their fathers and grandfathers did to create something they're proud of. It's why every drop of water and every blade of wheat comes from one well, one village, and one community. It's called one source. The reason why no matter where you are in the world, Absolut will always have the same high quality. This is the way it always has been, making Absolut the world's largest locally produced vodka. 1700s, a glassmaker molds a bottle like hundreds of others. Once used, it is forgotten, until it ends up on a dusty shelf of an antique store. 1978, the recipe for Absolut vodka had been revived, but no one could decide what to put it in. The answer was found in a vintage apothecary bottle encountered in Stockholm's oldest neighborhood. Many thought a bottle was just a bottle, but through transforming something basic, it turned into one of the world's most recognized silhouettes. It was everything Absolut stood for: clarity, simplicity, perfection. With no labels, the pure content could shine for all to see. 1979, the year Absolut came to America, a time when a unique style was required to make it on the scene, perfect for this new vodka. New York City was at the pinnacle of creative nightlife. Spots like Studio 54, Area, and the Palladium turned partying into an art form. It inspired the brand, which in turn inspired others. Throughout the next 3 decades, Absolut fueled the parties by pushing the boundaries of what to expect from a night out. Time and again, it transformed nightlife's potential as parties with an artistic edge evolved into parties created by the artists themselves. 1980, as Absolut was making its name inside the top clubs, its presence was missing from the pages of the magazines. It needed an ad to capture its unique sense of creativity. Madison Avenue was in a frenzy. 94 agencies were up for the opportunity. It was the day before the biggest pitch of his career, and admin Jeff Hayes couldn't pinpoint an idea. The hours ticking down, he took a bath to clear his mind. Suddenly, he realized the simplicity of it all. A calm took hold. He would strip away the flashing glitz, presenting the bottle in all its glory. That night, he didn't just create the first Absolut ad, but the idea for over 1,000 editions that would win hundreds of awards, creating a new hero that would transform the very notion of what an ad was supposed to look like. 1986. The next time Absolut revolutionized the ad industry was on a very different part of Madison Avenue, at Andy Warhol's factory. He admired the bottle. It said he would carry it with him to parties and wear its contents as cologne. Through transforming the perception of a common object, it brought art to the masses. The brand encouraged the world to explore their own self-expression, proving things are not only what you see, but also any version of them that can be imagined. Taking a step further, Absolut brought attention to the most challenging topics and ideas of the time, using art to change perspectives. Thousands would collaborate with the brand. For some, it was about supporting a movement. For many, it was their big break. But for millions more, Absolut had revealed that anything was possible through creativity. This is a story that is kept alive by those who dare to transform and reimagine what's possible. A story that has no ending. The story of Absolut.
One source. This is one of the things that we are extremely proud of, and maybe that's common knowledge, but I'm not so sure, and definitely not when we speak to consumers out in the world. As you saw in the movie, everything that we produce comes from Aarhus. We ship from Aarhus to 150 markets. It's made out of local winter wheat grown in the region of Skåne, and we have our own water. And as you saw, Lars Olsson Smith, he's on the medallion of each and every Absolut bottle. And there's a lot to be told about that man, and we don't have time for that today, but he was truly an entrepreneur back in the 1870s, 1880s. Aarhus, maybe you have been there, some of you, but it's a small community in the south of Sweden. We have 300 employees, but we managed to keep about 1,500 other people as well, occupied by supporting Absolut in one way or the other. Since we are at the coastline, we try to take advantage logistics-wise, so we ship 75% of the volume from our harbor in Aarhus. It's not a huge harbor, but still we try to support it and make sure that that works. If you've been to Aarhus and tried to come and visit Absolut, it's not the easiest thing in the world. We don't have any open visitor center all year round. We have a small thing during summer, but we are, and we have things like Guinness and Heineken as a benchmark. So we've just bought a house close to the factory, so hopefully next summer, if or when you visit Aarhus, you will have the opportunity to come to a real proper visitor center, Absolut style. Also, of course, we're proud of the local farming. And it's not only the wheat that we use to produce our product. What people normally don't know is that when you produce 1 liter of Absolut vodka, you get 9 liters of a byproduct called stillage. This is used to feed cows and pigs. Some 250,000 pigs eat this every day. So it's a kind of a circular economy that we are very proud of. Since I'm also in charge of quality and environment, I must mention the climate neutral production. We've worked intensively the last years to reduce our carbon footprint, for instance. And nowadays, I would say that we have the world's most efficient distillery. It's a bit hard to benchmark, but within the group, the Pernod Ricard group that we belong to, we are definitely by far the most efficient, and we're very proud of that. Also, it helps existing and producing in Sweden, where we can buy green electricity and so on. but it's a really good job being done at the distillery. And perhaps you don't know, but this Absolut and vodka is actually a food. So this is the largest food export from Sweden, and I know that you had a good time yesterday evening, so maybe today doesn't feel like it was food you were drinking. 99% is exported, just a tiny fraction is sold within the Swedish boundaries, and we are currently the 5th largest international spirits brand in the world. So, for those of you that has not been to the sunny part of Sweden, the Skåne region, it's on the east coast, as you see on the map, and we have mainly 4 sites. 1 distillery, 2 bottling sites, and 1 warehouse. And if we have a closer look at and try to explain the production process as well, it's not that complicated. We have the distillery. We have yeast, wheat, and water. And then it's magic to produce the alcohol, the Absolut vodka. And this is a process industry running almost every day, 24/7. Small stop during summer especially. And the reason for that is, of course, the Swedish vacation period, but also that some of the friends I mentioned earlier, the cows and the pigs, are outside eating grass instead. So we need to stop in order to balance that. 45 million liters of what we call pure alcohol, equivalent to 100% alcohol strength, is produced there every year. If we then move into the city of Aarhus, it's about 20 kilometers between the distillery and the main plant. And this has been around since 1906, I think. And it's really in the middle of the village. We have civilian houses surrounding the factory on 3 sides, and we have the river of Helgeå on the 4th side. So I guess that if a new factory should be built today, this would not be allowed. But we are there, and we take care of security and everything, make sure that we can stay there in the future as well. We have a different setup here. We run 2 shifts, 5 days a week, and we have 4.5 production lines. The 0.5 one is a semi-automatic line doing some of the things I will show you later on. Those things that are a bit hard to industrialize and are limited editions and so on. 88 million bottles of vodka every year is produced on this site. Then in 2008, for 2 reasons, we built an additional plant called a satellite plant. Foremost for a risk management purpose, if something should happen to the other plant, we still had this one, but also for capacity reasons. So this one is built to harbor 4 production lines, but right now we have only 1. And you could argue that, has the development in volume been that bad that you have only built 1 line instead of 2 or 3 by now? But actually, the second line would have been there if we had not been more efficient in production when it comes to OEE and line efficiency. So we see it as a good thing that we only have 1 line and not 2, because 1 production line is extremely expensive. 33 million bottles is produced on this site. And then from my perspective, the most important part as well, the warehouse. It's in the harbor, right next to the dock, where we load the containers on a feeder vessel going to Hamburg for the bigger vessels. Around 15 people, and on average we have 7 million bottles of alcohol in stock. So it's by far the biggest bar in Northern Europe. And we are, since 2008, owned by the French company Pernod Ricard, when we were sold by the Swedish government. A very good business deal, both for the Swedish taxpayers, but also for us as employees and for Pernod Ricard. So it was a win-win-win. So that's some of the slides are targeted to Paris. This is a picture from inside the warehouse. It's an automated warehouse where we have 10 cranes And those cranes travel around 33,000 kilometers each year. And that's about 10 round trips from Aarhus to Paris. And they lift 350,000 tons, and that's about 50 Eiffel Towers. That doesn't say much about the weight, I guess, but it says more about that if the Eiffel Tower is a very effective construction. It's one Empire State Building, but 50 Eiffel Towers. So, if we now talk about, I'm responsible for supply chain and Q&E. And by supply chain in Absolut and Aarhus, we talk about planning and warehousing. So I've tried to describe how we think regarding planning and the way we work there. First of all, it's important with cooperation. This is a typical supply chain. I guess you all realize have similar ones. Suppliers and so on to the consumers or customers at the very far end. And what's important for us is to have a very good cooperation in different ways. It depends on how big a supplier is. Some of our suppliers has been a partner with us since we started with Absolut in 1979. So we have, I would say, quite a unique collaborative planning together with them. They have direct line. I mean, if they have problems in the production, they call our production planning and they make the correct decision, because we know that a forecast is still a forecast. Even though we said that we needed something a certain time 2 weeks ago, things have changed during those 2 weeks. So we find the best optimal solution. So communication is key. We would love to have that cooperation as well with some of our customers, but we are not quite there. But that's the target, at least with the 10 biggest customers. Of course, we also need to keep track of what we call the base. It's all those things that logistics and planning department just needs to keep track of, like transport booking, administration of SKUs, quarantine, releasing goods, making sure that we load containers in a safe way, of course. That just needs to be managed in some way. And then we've also identified something we call projects, and it's a bit more fluffy around the edges. It's not that easy to make a solid process, because people change all the time, especially from a marketing perspective. And to give an example, a few years back, we had a fantastic summer, production-wise and shipping-wise. I think we shipped 40 million bottles in 3 months. We were so happy. When we got back from vacation, all that the management were talking about was 3 empty bottles that were supposed to be shipped to an executive in the US that did not get there on time. It's a different setup, and we are not that good at handling those projects, but it takes a lot of time, and it's not easy to plan ahead. But the most important thing I would say is optimization. And we work on a different levels. SKU management for us is making sure that we always have the correct portfolio. At least when we compare to our sister and brother companies in Pernod Ricard, I think we are quite unique. Whenever a market company would like to have a new size of an Absolut bottle or a new label on an Absolut bottle, they make a request. And we have a decision board making a decision if this should be okay or not. I guess in most companies, when a sales rep says something, that's the way it's going to be. That's not the case at us. They have to motivate it in a good way. If for some reason this is a request that we will approve, normally we will offer to remove something else. So it's always one in, one out. That's the optimum. Keeping the portfolio fresh. No, we understand that the salespeople out in the market needs to have some news when they visit bars and restaurants. But this is, I think, a very good process. And then something that I guess we all struggle with every day, the balance between the 3 key things that we manage: the inventory turnover, the OEE or line efficiency, and the delivery performance. And from my experience of not so many industries, but still 19 years in the spirits industry, you have to choose. You can't get it all. And from our perspective, OEE has been in focus for the last 10, 12 years, because that's where the biggest cost is. Delivery performance also important, but inventory turnover has not been that important. It's surfacing now, but still we need to keep the balance between those three. If you adjust one of them, it will have some effect on the other two. And some additional KPIs as well. We try to choose as few KPIs as possible, but keeping track of those thoroughly. And one supply chain flow, that's the name, of course. Okay, so now let's go back a few years, and I will try to explain what's happened in our business, and especially for us as a planning and operations part of Pernod Ricard. This is our main product, Absolut Vodka, the regular blue one. It's still 80% of our volume, and it always has been that way, no matter how many flavors or things we have launched. And then, as you might recognize, we have a few flavors as well. The first ones back in the 80s and 90s, we had pepper, citron, mandarin, and currant. Those are pretty known to people, I would say, and it was a big thing when they were launched. And as you see, on top of those, we have added a few flavors after that. Some are easy to understand what it is, some is nearly impossible, some berries from the northern slope of Himalaya or something. And it's a bit more tricky for a planning and a production organization to take care of this amount of SKUs. Recent years, we have expanded, so we now have a super premium or a luxury vodka. We have vodka rested in oak barrels to compete with the whiskey business. Every year, we launch end-of-year campaign, 4 or 5 million bottles, and you can be sure that every year it's something a bit on the edge from our perspective. Even it could be on the edge production-wise in Aarhus, but normally it's on the edge for one of our suppliers. The top left one, for instance, was a campaign called Absolut Unique. 4 million bottles, and all looked different. I mean, we have a setup in the factory, making sure that every bottle looks the same. And then all of a sudden, we should make sure that everybody didn't look the same. It worked. We have a mid-year campaign as well. And you saw some of the ads in the movie. So we had the ads. Then, of course, somebody came up with a brilliant idea to also make a real bottle of those ads. So many American cities got their own flavor and their own bottle. And if the US wanted something, of course, the rest of the world wanted as well. So the number of SKU just kept growing. In addition to that, some smaller things. Bottom left is something called the Bartender Collection, just a tiny volume that bartenders should have as something extra in the bar when people wanted a good drink. We have an absolute mixture with sparkling wine. Interesting. So this is the kind of the things that happened. And to summarize this, between 2008, when we bought, this is when we had the recession in the world. We needed to lift the volume. And what do you do then? Well, you innovate. So as you see, when we compare those 2 years, the top line, the volume has not increased that much, plus 6%. But all the other KPIs has grown to an extreme. So this is when I had one of our conversations with a master planner in Aarhus. This was not possible to do within a human brain anymore, because we had a very manual way of doing the production planning. Basically, on Mondays, we started with SKU number 1, and we went through all 500-600 SKUs, looking at orders, looking at inventory, and deciding what to produce next week. It wasn't possible to do that, so we needed something else. And that's when we stumble upon a company called Optilon. Yeah, you know about them. And in 2015, we implemented SO99. Maybe some of you are familiar with that. And in addition to this, we also needed a way of taking those last percentage in OEE up. We are at the 74% line efficiency today, which is extremely good. But in order to get to the vision that we have, that is 80%, we need to do something more. And one of the key things is the sequence in which we plan production, making sure that the switchovers are as few as possible and takes as little time as possible. So this is what we did, and this is integrated with a Pernod Ricard system called Connect, where every producing company are connected with market companies around the world. Some 200 affiliates are connected in this way. And ideally, those forecasts we receive should be of good quality and something we could use to produce, to make our production planning. And as you realize, that's really not the case. So what we did was that we went from a time-consuming manual planning to focus on optimizing instead. So managing by exceptions. Again, I'm a bit reluctant to systems with a hell of a lot of parameters, because you need to control them as a human being, and that's not easy. But this is manageable, and we still keep the human touch, as we call it. I mean, we should still focus. The human brain is pretty good at listening in to what's being talked about in the corridor, going to information meetings, getting information, and that's something a system can never do. But we need to have a good combination, and I think that we are on the right track here. In the future, we would like to have what we call the GPS mode. When you're in your car wanting to go to a certain location, you get different options. You can go the fastest way, or you can go the most economical way. And it's not necessarily the same path. So what we would like to do is that, since we have a peak season from June to December, and we are almost at the maximum capacity in a factory, we would like to produce as fast as possible. During the rest of the year, we don't have that high pressure. We would like to change and have a more economical way of producing, meaning that when we produce fast, we might lose a lot of the spirits, because we switch not between sizes, we keep the size and we switch the fluid. But we can do the opposite during the low season. It's thoughts for the future. So, what have I learned from 19 years of the spirits industry and production planning? Not much, but some key facts. Some of these things are obvious. When you implement a new software, do not underestimate time and resources. I think it's being done every time. We did it. The results were good, but we had to put in more effort than we thought that we needed. Expect problems with master data and integration. It takes longer time than you think, but make sure as well that you have good support, which we've had during our process. The spirits industry will continue to be what we call innovative, making new products. I mean, we have a secret list with projects to come the following years, and some of them are maybe not robots, but still they are by our means really, really special. And also making sure that we can handle the complexity that's being created with those new production techniques or new patterns or whatever it will be. And maybe the most important thing that I've learned is that human control over systems are crucial. Do not put in a software and leave the human being on the side. If you put something in to a system and you get something out, you need to understand what's happening within that machine. That's really important. And as well, it's very easy, I think, in theory, to manage logistics flow, at least if you ask consultants. But it's highly complex in practice. It's a lot of hard work to get the right flow. And this is almost, thank you. I promised you one more short video, and this video is more of an ad, but just to show our standpoint when it comes to diversity in the world.
Jake had just gone through a breakup. Didn't even want to celebrate his own birthday. But friends don't let that happen, so we picked him up and we took him to dinner. He laughed a bit. It was flashes of the old Jake. We ate seafood and drank Absolut martinis. The street was quiet and we felt free, so we ran like wild animals. Jake howled at the moon. We went to a bar and this guy was playing the piano, really playing, and suddenly Jake was singing at the top of his lungs. So we all joined in. It was joyous. We ran into our friend and she brought us around. Cheers, Jake. We went to this beautiful old building and it was empty, so we played, not thinking about anything, just playing, having fun. We all went to this house party and we danced like crazy while lights flashed all around us. It felt good to celebrate, to be alive. It was our night, our time. We jumped in a cab and rode back to Jake's place. We walked and watched the sun come up. It's good to see my friend happy. Welcome back, Jake. That was my absolute night.
My mistake, that was actually not the right video. But you have it on YouTube if you would like to see it. Thank you.
Thank you for taking us on that journey. I mean, it's amazing. One knows the Absolut brand really well, and it's amazing to see, how far you've come and that it's still local and also out of a sustainable
and we're very proud of it. We try to let everyone know.
Yeah. And I remember that you mentioned the fact that human control is crucial, and also taking in consideration, we've talked a bit previously about, automated robots, artificial intelligence is coming, the automation of processes. I mean, how far can we go before we actually lose control? I mean, the human control, if we talk about Absolut.
We talk about Absolut. Actually, if we look at our production process from if you follow the bottle from sand until consumer has the bottle in his or her hand, the consumer is normally the second person who touches the bottle. The first one is the one working in the shop, putting it on the shelf. We never touch the bottle. It's automated all the way through. So wherever we can, I would say that we are using machines. There are a few things that machines still are not very good at, and that's, for instance, making sure that the bottle looks okay, printing and so on. So there we have the human eye interfering, so to speak. But apart from that, I would say we are quite automized. And in the future, with Starship Technologies, it will be even better.
And bearing in mind, you have a long experience, and we're talking about the supply chain. What has been the big hurdles during the past years when it comes to the supply chain? What are sort of the aspects that have been more difficult than others?
I must go into the subject of being in a bigger corporation. It's hard to align the supply chain community with the financial community. We sometimes do not see the same things. We do not speak the same language, so to speak. So I think that we need to gain a better understanding of each other's areas, because sometimes we want to optimize, but there are those kinds of hurdles in the way.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'd like to open up to the audience. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, hopefully. Anyone? No questions on a topic like this? Okay, but then I'll ask an additional question. How do you sort of keep up the creativity? Because obviously there's a lot of creativity in the company, but it also, gives quite a lot of challenges when it comes to the supply chain. So how do you sort of meet that? Is it first the creative part that comes, and then you sort of make the supply chain make it happen?
I think we are involved pretty early in the process. So some of the ideas that originally was the intention of the project might not be the end result. So I think that we are pretty good at making sure that we are able to industrialize whatever idea might be at the marketing and the most creative part of the company. So I think that we're pretty good at that. Then of course, I think none of those projects that we saw earlier on has been easy. It has been difficulties, and we have a few that's never, even they did not hit market. So that's the thing. So it's on the edge in terms of our perspective. Yes, it is.
Is there something you can share, like maybe 5 years in a perspective? Is there any big evolution within vodka? You're going to have like Starship Technologies vodkas flying in, or?
No, but I think that Starship Technologies ID is in line with what will happen, and that's in the area of supply chain sustainability, making sure that the supply chain also not only think in terms of costs, but also when it comes to CO2, energy, and so on. And I think it will be a new perspective. I mean, we, as I guess a lot of you guys as well, we sometimes produce something that nobody needs because of a forecast error or whatever, and then we talk about cost, but we don't talk about the impact for a sustainability point of view on. We have produced something that nobody needs, and that's a huge mistake. It is.
Well, thank you so much for that insightful journey, and best of luck with the future of Absolut Vodka.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.